All right, well, good evening. For those of you here and for those of you online, we're going to go ahead and get started. To start the presentation, we're going to take a roll back a few weeks ago and kind of put ourselves back in the time and place on what was going on during the Los Angeles County wildland fires and kind of reset our minds going into this conversation and Q&A tonight. So with that, we'll just show a brief clip here from BBC News, and then we'll get into some more information about this evening.
Devastation comes to California.
All right, dude. Yeah, let's get out of here.
Residents flee for their lives.
There's nothing we can do now, bro.
We had everything, like the sentimental things. Like my mom passed away. I had only a few things of hers left.
All the stuff that's here is replaceable. People are not. So having the family is the most important thing.
Homes are destroyed on an unprecedented scale.
People would normally be driving up and down here with surfboards on top of their cars, ready to enjoy a day at the beach. But right now, it just looks like some sort of apocalypse.
Firefighters struggle to hold back the flames.
All 29 fire departments in our county are not prepared for this type of widespread disaster.
But how did it happen? And why did the fires spread so quickly?
So certainly a lot of tragedy and sadness going on in Los Angeles, and we were privileged here at Aurora Fire Rescue to have firefighters deployed to that incident. So this evening you'll get to hear from them. You'll get to hear from me and some other folks here. My name is Eric Hurst. I'm a public information officer here at Aurora Fire Rescue. And in the panel we have 3 firefighters who are on the wildland team that deployed with Brush Engine 13 to this incident, and they're going to tell us about their experiences. We also have Edward in the front row. He's going to help us talk about how to be safer, community risk reduction specialist and an expert in preparedness. And then we have Assistant Chief Hunter Hackbarth here with us tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Hackbarth for some opening comments, and then we'll keep going. Chief?
Welcome. We appreciate people taking the time to help us celebrate the return of our wildland crew and learn about protecting themselves in a wildfire and other emergencies. Aurora Fire Rescue's Wildland Specialty Team has an important role in protecting Aurora whenever there is a brush fire. In Colorado's dry climate, wildfires are always a threat. It's incumbent on us all to stay vigilant and do what we can to protect ourselves and the community. And we look forward to spending part of your evening and sharing tips with you to help protect our community from wildfire.
Thanks, Chief. And just for a reminder for folks who might be watching the stream online, please submit your questions as you have them. We have folks here monitoring the questions, and they will let us know what those are, and we'll direct them to the right person. So a few of the topics to lead off and hopefully spark some questions in the community. We'll be talking about the Los Angeles County wildfires specifically, how and why Aurora helped, and then how Aurora manages brush fires within our own community, how the weather impacts these events, and oftentimes our community hears the term a year-round fire season, but what does that really mean? So we'll talk about that, and we'll also talk about how people in Aurora can be prepared in case an emergency happens, whether that's a fire or something else. So with the Los Angeles wildland fires, really this was a combination of a lot of different factors, but the big ones are dry vegetation, low relative humidity, and then damaging winds that were occurring. So high wind warnings and red flag warnings at the same time. It was a particularly dangerous situation, and as we all saw, very, very extensive devastation there. Of the multiple fires that occurred, Aurora's crew was assigned to the Palisades fire, which burned just over 23,000 acres, destroyed nearly 7,000 structures, and damaged another 1,000 structures on top of that, and there were 12 civilian fatalities. So the question might be out there, why was Aurora Fire Rescue helping? Why were firefighters from Colorado there? Well, as you may have heard in the video with Los Angeles County's fire chief, those incidents far surpassed the available resources that were able to immediately respond and then be able to continue working that incident in the days and weeks that followed. So California, just like most of the different states in the United States, will rely on firefighters from across the country to come and help. And Colorado received that call for help on January 10th, and it was a call for 50 engines, 50 different fire engines, all of those staffed generally with a crew of 4, and assembled into different groups called strike teams or task forces, and that's a group of 5 engines with a leader. So among them were Aurora's Brush Engine 13. That's a vehicle that's specifically designed for wildland-urban interface fires. And here at Aurora Fire Rescue, we have that vehicle and then 5 other smaller wildland fire engines called brush trucks that are available at any moment to respond to vegetation fires in the city or perhaps even helping some of the neighbors. So with national wildfire events, some of these become quite large, hundreds, even hundreds of thousands of acres, and then they take hundreds or even thousands of personnel to efficiently respond to. And they're traveling out of state to do that, sometimes even from out of the country. And the good news is for Aurora is that these deployments are 100% reimbursable. So the cost of the engine, the fuel, the personnel going out there to work, all of that is reimbursed to the city, so there's no dollar loss there. A look at 2024, within the city of Aurora, AFR responded to 293 vegetation fires last year. So we certainly have fires closer to home. They're not just in California. Thankfully, most of those vegetation fires are quickly extinguished. They're kept small by the AFR crews. And the goal at Aurora is to keep them less than 1 acre 90% of the time or more. That's really important because fires that exceed 1 acre or they threaten buildings, threatens people's homes, those will take additional resources, lots of firefighters, lots of engines, and at that point, if it's over 1 acre, especially if there's a wind component to it, it can become quite difficult to get those under control. So the faster that a lot of resources and firefighters can get there to keep the fire small, the better. And thankfully, Aurora has great partners surrounding us that will help us with vegetation fires if those happen, those big ones. And also, Aurora Fire Rescue has the ability to upstaff fire apparatus. So last year, 22 different times, Aurora put additional personnel on wildland firefighting apparatus. Some of those were red flag warning days when the weather was really dangerous, and other times that was around the 4th of July, just knowing that there are more opportunities to have fire starts because of fireworks. So earlier I mentioned the difference with a year-round fire season and how folks who have lived along the Colorado Front Range might think that that's different than in the past. And there's a few different factors that contribute to that. Most notably, it's dry fuel moisture. So if we haven't had measurable precipitation, whether that's rain or snow in recent days or weeks, that can contribute to vegetation like weeds and small grasses that are readily available to ignite if there's a spark or something that starts them on fire. And if you combine that with gusty wind, then that's an even more dangerous condition where the fires can spread quite rapidly. So firefighters are paying attention to the forecast daily and looking days, weeks in advance on what might be predicted, and always looking for that prediction and also what a worst case scenario might be to judge the staffing and response levels. When we talk about preparedness, there is a lot that people can do, and we don't want people to just think if they live in the middle of the city that they're not in danger or their property's not in danger of a fire starting. Everybody can take measures at their home or the building that they live in to be safer, whether they're in the city center, whether they live along open spaces or some of the creeks that go through the city. All of us can do more at home to be safer, and we want to focus on that home ignition zone, which is the first 0 to 5 feet away from your home or building as a focus point. So think of all the things that might collect embers or maybe where a lit firework could land, and you want to avoid having anything that could ignite around your home, and then that could start the home on fire. So lots of information there that we can get into more and more, but generally just keeping that outside of the home and especially things up against the home clear of anything that can burn. Another really important thing for Aurora residents to do, if you haven't already done so, is sign up for Alert Aurora. And this is a way for 911 dispatchers to notify residents if they need to be aware of something happening, whether that's a shelter in place, perhaps there's a violent situation or a hazardous material situation, or perhaps it's even an evacuation for some reason, like an approaching fire. We want residents to be signed up for that. We also want folks who work in the city to be signed up for that as well. So whether you're living or working or visiting Aurora, having those notifications set up on your phone are really important. You can use that QR code to sign up, and alerts can be sent to your cellular device, to your email, to receive text messages and voicemails there. So really important to do. The other thing to highlight is that only about 5% of Aurora residents are actually signed up for this. This is an opt-in system. So really important to do that. And then the last note there on your mobile phone settings, somewhere around where you would toggle Amber alerts on or off, there should be a WEA alert setting, which is WEA, that's Wireless Emergency Alerts. That is another capability that Aurora has to notify people in the city who aren't signed up for Alert Aurora, but it's good to be signed up for both of those. Make sure that you toggle that WEA alert on, and that should help protect you as you travel outside of Aurora, travel around the country, to receive those alerts too, just in case wherever you're traveling to has an emergency occurring. So with that, we definitely welcome you to submit questions, and we have a few to start the evening off with. So I will toss the first question to Captain Jeremy Sones, and that is if you can tell us about your experience deploying to Los Angeles and what that was like.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of break it into two parts: departure and travel, and then arrival and assignment, and then our assignments. And first and foremost, I think it's important to convey that very thankful for the support and the opportunity. The support from family, from our fire chief, from our fire department leadership, the community, the city leadership, and to be able to represent and go serve our fellow citizens in California. So I just want to make sure that we have that out on the table. Initially on our departure and travel, I always focus on our crew and apparatus and the launch of that, and ensuring that the crew dynamic, learning that, and that we're safely going to travel and arrive to our assignment. So that's something that I'm focused on early on. The crew dynamics was interesting on this one. First and foremost, Lieutenant Servas and I have been assigned before on fires. At this point, he is training to be an engine boss. So he was given the reins to be a trainee, and so that provides a dynamic where I have the opportunity to sit back, offer advice, and let him impart his leadership and affect his leadership for the crew. The other dynamic is that our two other members, this is their first assignment with Aurora, and also it was our first kind of time to be able to work side by side with them. So early on, that crew dynamic is very important. We call it crew cohesion, where we want to kind of get to know each other, get past that dance, and really strengthen that relationship and earn each other's trust and respect, and be able to go out there and perform effectively with resilience and be able to adapt and overcome when needed, because these situations are so dynamic a lot of times, and that you need that. So that's one of the real big keys there. The second part is just our arrival and assignment. We're working with the strike team and a leader. Our leadership was from Salida, and then our crews in the strike team were from Boulder, Mountain View, Left Hand Canyon, and that Hudson Lock Buoy area. And so we're needing to forge relationships with them just as much as within our crew, for all those same reasons. And so again, getting past the dance, getting to know them, and early on, and so that we can all work together. Because not only for this incident, but back here in Colorado, throughout Colorado, the potential, or in our region, we're going to be working side by side again. So it's very important to forge those relationships. We were assigned Division Zulu, which is kind of the north part of the fire in Topanga State Park, above the city of Tarzana, and kind of We were providing a vigilant readiness there, hot spotting, and having a readiness in case other fire starts occurred or the fire got out of the perimeter. In one of our shifts, we were up in the Division Alpha, and that was up in the Palisades communities where a lot of the devastation was. And for that shift, our job was to patrol and to interact with the public and assist where needed. So that's kind of an overview of our time spent on this assignment.
Great, thanks for that overview. Michael, question for you. So as a firefighter getting ready to deploy, you get the call that you're going. It's a 14-day assignment that you're going to be there with some travel days on either side of that. How do you prepare when that call comes in? How do you know what to pack? I mean, just from the human side of things, I think most people are preparing for a 2-week vacation a long time in advance before that happens. So tell me about how that goes for you.
Yeah, so the way that it works for us is we've got a list basically that kind of outlines who is in each position and who's probably the next one up. I mean, obviously, you know, that can change if anybody's unable to at the last minute. But you kind of have a little bit of notice, you know. So for us, we got a text from Captain here, I think the night before or something like that. That was just like, hey, heads up, you know, you guys might be going, we might be getting the order tomorrow, we're not really sure when, you know. So everybody's bags were all packed and everybody was ready and waiting. And that call came the next morning, and I think we have about 2 hours to get there between when you get the order and when we have to leave. So I think we got the order sometime around 10 o'clock in the morning, and we had to be ready at noon, and then we had to prep a little bit, and I think we were out at like 1:30. But it's an 18-day assignment, or it's, you know, including travel. So I think that we came back on our 18th day, and you know, it's a lot to pack in a small bag, and you know, you have to be ready to kind of traverse every situation that you have there. So luckily we're provided with a list of some recommendations and stuff like that of, hey, you should be bringing this in case or bringing that in case. Yeah.
Great, thanks for that. And then Jeremy, back to you. So you had mentioned earlier too that the deployment benefits Aurora firefighters while they're out there. Tell us about how that works.
In particular, the training?
Yeah, exactly. So from a training perspective, task book perspective, and getting signed off, and then how that experience will benefit Aurora when you come back.
Right. Yeah, so on this particular incident, with all the resources and all the incident management challenges, there is some time where we're potentially staged and waiting for an assignment. So that gave us an opportunity to really forge those relationships and allow Lieutenant Servas to really work that leadership role and kind of lead us in that and make those decisions that needed to occur. So that's kind of part of the training, learning, you know, kind of going over our radios. The radios that we use, the communication systems are a little bit different than what we use in the city, so we don't get a chance to get our hands on those very often. So there's time spent, you know, training on that and working through that in case we have to input a radio channel really quickly on another incident that we are sent to or within our division or our assignment. We also spent some time, you know, you're having large incidents, so we're driving in traffic, heavy traffic, fire traffic, operating the apparatus on grades. We're not used to that here in the flat country of Aurora, so that's interesting, and so that's kind of another dynamic there, and also obviously off-road, so that gives us a chance to work on those as well. Training with our strike team, getting a chance to get to know each other. Everyone's carries their hose packs a little differently. So in case we had to do hose line construction, we worked on, you know, training, work on basically deploying the hose packs together and all the different agencies there that were with us. Luckily, thankfully for us, we had a lot of experience on all the different rigs that were there in our strike team, so that really helped us grow and develop. internally as a crew and then as a team as well. Hand line construction with hand tools, we did that with saws, so we had practice on that and working together in case we got called to go and build hand line construction. So obviously on the assignment we're working on other positions such as being a lookout, taking weather observations, and let's see what else. I'm trying to think here. I have some notes here. Oh yeah, one thing for me is technology. Always getting better at that and navigating that. So maps, compasses, technology, and learning and letting everyone have an opportunity. Everyone has different aptitudes, so I tend to be the learner in that, learning from our crew. So yeah, so that's the training was really beneficial when we had that time to institute that and be a part of that. So.
Great. Yeah, thanks for highlighting all those, the professional wildland specific tasks there. For any of you, from the personal side of things, are there any memorable moments that come to light that you can think of that the community would like to hear about that experience?
Just when we went up to the actual city of Palisade, that whole area that you saw in the clip that you first played, the devastation that was through that neighborhood. We went ahead and punched out and went up and saw an elderly lady trying to move some furniture or something up on a hill where we could locate her. And that whole time we'd been driving, we're like, today we really need to, see if we can interact with the public. So that was our opportunity to drive up and help a family kind of sift through the ashes and offer what we could, which was water and a tarp to put their belongings in. So just kind of giving our empathy to their loss. I think that was really memorable for us to be there with them at that moment. And one of their daughters went to CU Boulder. So they were happy to see a rig from Colorado. And one of them was pregnant. So we were just kind of helping out where we could, but that was very memorable. And it just, talking to somebody that has lost everything in a few hours is pretty traumatic,
How about the other one, the story?
Piece of paper one.
Yeah, we were continuing on through Palisade after we stopped at LA Fire Station 69, where the president gave his briefing and his kind of his interview with his team and the mayor. We stopped by there and then we continued on, just kind of following the flow of the fire from where it began at drop point 1 all the way down to the coast. So we were getting closer, just going through houses, seeing if there was any smoldering debris. And then there was, just on top of all this rubble, was a letter written by like a second grader about what they did over winter break. And it was burned all around it, and it was like, we went to Turks and Caicos. It's like, that letter, kind of helped me think, everything's destroyed, but their memories are still there. So it was pretty good to see that little letter there, and we wrapped it up and left it on the driveway for, who knows if it's the same house or not, but maybe that letter gets found one day.
Sure. Yeah, super powerful there. And then we had heard that perhaps even before you arrived and started helping people in Los Angeles, you helped a motorcycle accident on the way out there too?
Oh, that's right. We were driving to the incident command post out in Zuma Beach in Malibu, and it was at night, roughly 8 o'clock. I'm just kind of guessing there, but we were driving by and a lot of cars were slowing down, and we were in our convoy of the 5 apparatus and our strike team leader. And, cars have their flashers on, and we're trying to see what's going on. And there was a female motorcycle rider that was up against the center concrete barrier. And so all 5 Colorado rigs kind of blocked traffic. We got out. She had obvious injuries that needed to be addressed. All of us working together who we had just met that day were like, okay, I got this, and we were able to hand her off to the local EMS. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great crew collaboration there for sure. And then what else do you think is going to stick with you the most from this experience for any of you?
One thing that I want to say is going on these assignments and being a part of like the Marshall Fire and going up there, there's always this image in the back of my head. It's like, this is the worst I've ever seen. I don't think it could get much worse. And all these wildfires that run through houses, and you're like, oh, there's a burnt out house. There's multiple burnt out houses around here, but the amount of devastation that we saw, I don't know how you top that. But California has a huge potential for a loss in another event just like Palisade. With the amount of homes and fuel and weather and wind and drought that they have, they can have another Palisade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just to echo that, I mean, I think it was something like 23,000 acres, which I think is something like 35 square miles or something. And just to put that to context, like what that would look like in Aurora, is huge. And just the pure devastation of it is, I don't think that we'll ever see anything like that again in our lives. And here in Aurora, we get like a house fire, a multifamily fire, and like that's a huge event for us. But to see blocks, neighborhoods leveled with nothing left was really sad to see. So
sure. Yeah, and Jeremy, the next one's for you. So these fires have to start somehow. Yeah. Fires have to start somehow. A lot of times when we see conflagrations like this, it's because of an outside fire, whether that's vegetation or something else. Right. So can you tell us about the factors that would lead from a small outside fire turning into a vegetation fire, and what that's like, what conditions make that worse and more dangerous?
Right. I think in general we talk about the three influences of wildland fires: fuel, weather, and topography or terrain, right? And with fuel, one of the big factors is just that dry, receptive fuel, usually a lighter loaded fuel like a grass. But it could also be, your trash or something as well, just starting. And then coupling that with the dry air, so low relative humidities, and then if you have terrain, obviously wind is going to be the wild card, and I'll talk about that in a second, because that leads into is going to lead in to the next question. But, topography or terrain also, causes the fire. I mean, heat rises, and so you have preheat, and then next thing you know, you have the fire, traveling uphill a lot quicker and being channeled through features that potentially lead to, fire behavior challenges. With the wind, obviously, I've always said it's the wild card. The wind is the wild card in these events, and the wind is everywhere. We can't control it. First of all, we try to control it. There's only very key figure, mentor in my life, made a comment the other day about this is one of the only disasters that we try to influence or try to control, and he's correct. And so, with the wind, that is the wild card, and you can't control that. You can't really influence that. And so, that is where we're. That's the key factor here, spreading the fire and creating those embers that transfer that fire from a vegetation source and now into potentially structures or neighborhoods, and starting that home-to-home ignition, and that's where you get the devastation. So a lot of these fires, typically 80% of these types of ignitions are from ember production, and that's what that wind does, is that it creates lofts, downrange, and causes the spot fires.
neighborhoods miles away are affected. So, yeah, wind is that wild card. I think that leads into our next question, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it does too, which is what are some of the things homeowners can do to protect their homes? And from the firefighter perspective, you've probably seen homes that have burned and homes that haven't burned.
Right.
A lot of times, the homes that haven't burned, that's not an accident that they didn't. It's because people took steps ahead of time to make their home more resilient, and perhaps even made it easier or safer for firefighters to engage it. So could you tell us more about that?
Just going back to that initial slide that you had, when we prep a structure for structure defense, we always worry about that 5 feet around their home. And the homes that we kind of train on in our district and around the area are usually the ones that back up to like a green belt, per se. And so we always kind of concentrate there and make sure that homeowners are aware, people are aware in the public that that 5 feet around their structure is really, it's really important for that area to be kept clean and tidy. And those receptive fuel beds that ember will find its way into will just slowly eat into that house. So mostly concerned about that 5 feet around the home, just keeping that area cleaned, and the gutters. We don't have that many tall trees here, but I mean, you get down to some areas and you worry about their gutters too. They just have a lot of pine needles and duff that are stuck in their gutters, and they get an ember into a receptive fuel bed and it'll just smolder and ignite.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Edward, I'm going to turn the next one to you. So we talked about how you can make property more resilient, but us as humans, as people, there are so many factors that go into disaster and preparing for emergencies. So how can we as individuals, for our family, our friends, our pets, the things that are most important to us, how can we be prepared?
Yes, absolutely. We discussed a little bit about how you would prepare the exterior of your home. But we also want to, be conscientious of what we can do on the interior, not only keeping us safe, but also the things that you want to have readily available should an emergency, come our way. Obviously, first and foremost, you want to ensure that you have working smoke alarms in your home, something that we take for granted, but something that is critical to our safety. So you want to make sure that you have those in every bedroom, on every floor, outside of every sleeping area, making sure that you're testing those on a monthly basis, replacing those batteries on a yearly basis, and replacing the entire unit after 10 years after that manufacture date. So you want to make sure that you have working smoke alarms. You want to make sure that you have an escape plan for your family, being familiar with evacuation routes out of your home. If applicable, you want to at least have 2 out of every room. Practice evacuating your home. It's important that, just as you did growing up when you were in school, that you're familiar with the exits in your home. Thank you. Making sure that you practice that at least twice a year. Practice that at night as well. Emergencies don't discriminate on the time of day, so it can happen during the day, it can happen during the night. Establish a meeting place for your family to meet if and when you need to evacuate your home. You also want to think about establishing a contact out of your area, a point of contact. During large-scale emergencies, networks can go down. It can be difficult to reach individuals within your own network. You want to think about, how am I going to get that information about my own whereabouts, how I'm doing, to them, and learn about, how they're doing as well. And sometimes it may be easier to reach an individual out of your network than someone within your own. So you want to think of someone who can be a purveyor of information, sort of a communication hub, if and when you need that to be able to communicate with family members if you were to separate. And not only that, you think of, if I relay my information to this point of contact and I happen to lose my phone, at least they can contact other family members and let them know about how I'm doing if I can't reach them. You also want to think about, having emergency kits readily available in your home, not only in your home, but those that are portable, maybe having a smaller one in your vehicle should you have to evacuate or shelter in place. For those in the audience, our community risk reduction team, we have a checklist here of recommended items, and they can vary from, copies of important documents that, as we learned from the fire here in California, when things are gone, it's hard, we don't memorize all this information. We don't always keep it readily available with us, but there are documents that we want to be able to at least provide when asked upon to do so. So we want to be able to have copies of that, create digital backups of those as well. But make those part of your kit. We're talking about medications, phone chargers, change of clothing, food. But it is very important. One that I really want to highlight is when we're talking about phone contact information. We become accustomed to entering contacts into our phone, and we contact individuals simply by name. But if I was to ask you, heck, I don't remember most of the phone numbers on my phone. But if you're able to actually write those down on a contact information sheet and have a hard copy of that as part of your kit, should you need to evacuate and have numbers of your physicians, family members, schools, whoever it may be that's important in your life, having those so that you can actually make contact with those individuals and know what those numbers are. Or if an agency is asking you, hey, are you familiar with these phone numbers? Can we call someone for you? I don't know the number. So you want to make sure that you have those as well. And then lastly, I can't emphasize enough something that Eric, that you already spoke upon, is signing up and staying informed with these alerts. These things happen in real time, folks, and you want to be able to know this information as soon as possible. Please do that due diligence of signing up for these alerts. 5% of the population that number is way too low. We need to get that number up in terms of the residents here in Aurora being able to receive that information when it first happens. So I really encourage you to do that.
Great. Thank you for all that awesome information. I know we've talked about a whole lot this evening, so I'm sure that people have some questions. So if you have any, please let us know. If you're in the room, please raise your hand, and then if we have any online, we can address those.
We did get a couple of questions online. How likely is it that wildfires similar to those in California could happen here in Aurora?
Maybe turn to Captain Sones on that one.
Sure, I'll take that. Yeah, I think it's very likely. I would say that we are much in this region. We are very prone to that year-round, and we need to be ready. Look at today with the weather and the wind today. We have that, with the winter time, the fuels get drier. If we don't have any precipitation, and you have the wind, you have that potential. So we have to be ready for that. March is another time. If we don't have any moisture then, things are cured out and dried, and that's not typically a fire season. Typically the fire season, we think about summertime, and here it is, it's February, and we're looking into March potentially, where we've had some fires here in Colorado. And then obviously the big one, Marshall Fire, into December. So, yeah, very likely.
I have another one here. How should we, what should I include in my emergency supply kit specifically for wildfires?
Well, your emergency kit, we're talking about whether it's a wildfire, whether it's you needing an emergency kit simply because you're evacuating due to a house fire. Obviously, with each family, you want to be conscientious of the unique needs of your individual family. That varies from family to family. You're talking about prescriptions, medications, change of clothing, food, batteries, flashlights, things that you're able to, going to help you navigate the night or even the day. We're talking about fire extinguishers, we're talking about hygiene items, we're talking about water. So it's not necessarily a wildfire specific kit, but it's something that will keep you safe independent of the event.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'll tag on too from a mindset component, and it's something that I've seen and heard from residents, is not having the mindset that a mandatory evacuation could happen if you're away from home. So if you have kids that are home alone, pets who are there, or adults who have mobility problems and may not be able to evacuate on their own, having a plan ahead of time so that if you're not home when there's an evacuation, what are you going to do in that instance as well? So more of a mindset thing there, but something to consider in a plan as well.
Another one. What are the most common natural disasters we should prepare for in Aurora besides wildfires?
I'm happy to take a leap at that one, and then we can pass it on down the line.
You'll probably hit them all.
We'll find out, yeah. Fire is certainly one of the most prominent, especially the lighter fuels as firefighters look at vegetation. Vegetation is fuel, so grasses, weeds, bushes, those kinds of things, and then as it dries out, getting into trees. So wildfire is certainly a big one there. Snowstorms definitely have a big impact, especially when it comes to blizzards and debilitating travel. Sometimes that can knock out the electricity, and then in that case, it's really not an evacuation, but people may be trapped at home for extended periods of time, and if they're reliant on oxygen, medications that they can't have access to, that can be a considerable emergency. And then on the other side of the seasons, certainly with weather, severe weather in particular, Aurora is no stranger to having tornadoes touch down within the city or near the city limits, and so being prepared for a tornado event is important, and going to the lowest level of the home or an interior room or closet that is windowless is the thing that people would want to do there. And then certainly something to keep in mind as people drive throughout the city of Aurora, you may see tornado sirens, and tornado sirens are meant to only be heard when you're outside. They're not intended for people who are inside of a building or a home to hear that and be alerted that there's a tornado, a warning that's been issued. So it's important to have another means of notification. Lots of different apps and local news services that you can sign up for on your cellular devices to get push notifications for tornado warnings, and then the NOAA weather radios are important. And then from the outside perspective, also going right along the same lines of severe weather would be the danger of lightning and damaging or injuring hail when folks are outside as well. So being weather aware is something that's really important, because it factors in our fire danger, it factors in severe weather, whether that's, the severe thunderstorms or snowfall. So those are the big ones when it comes to natural disaster potential that folks should have in mind.
I'd just like to add, I think along those lines of hail and lightning, we get to flash flooding, and we had that flood in September. I think it was September of 2013. Obviously, we get localized flooding, but that was more kind of along the Front Range. So flooding would be something that I think we should also be aware of and be prepared for.
Yeah, and the key takeaway there is never driving through water that you don't know the depth of, and certainly not driving or walking through moving water. It doesn't take very deep water, just a couple inches, to sweep a person off of their feet or carry their car away.
And the last question that I've got here right now is, if I live in an apartment, is there anything that I can do to protect my home or tell the property manager to do to reduce our risk?
Well, I would again, going back to, I would like to see that the idea of having functioning and working smoke alarms, you are not an exception to that. Whether you live in an apartment, whether you live in a home, that is something that we want to see within your dwelling. So if that is something that is your apartment manager responsible for, or that is something that whether you live in a condominium or whether you live in an apartment, that is something you want to make sure that you still have. So if that is something that they are working with you on, continue to work with them, and please make sure that and reiterate to them and emphasize to them that it is something that it is important that you have in your residence as well. And the same thing can be said for knowing how to get out of that apartment and identifying those points in which you can evacuate that apartment should the need arise. So same things to kind of keep in mind.
Yes, of course.
So
we're going to bring a microphone to you.
Oh, thanks. Good microphone. Now you guys are really good. A couple questions. While you're in California out there, and you cross-pollinate with other fire departments out there, do you ever see any equipment or anything you think, well, that might be, something we could probably look into getting, something to help our mission to better protect our community here, while you get to see, what other fire departments have?
Yeah, it was
it was an apparatus kind of, all types of apparatus. You know, you're just walking around, you're looking at hundreds of different fire engines, fire trucks, and you're looking to see how they're outfitted. Or one thing in particular was, how do we wrap hose on the back of our engine? And it made a lot of sense seeing one that was at an angle rather than straight back at like how ours are. So we're like, oh, that makes a lot. I wonder if we can develop something where the hose that we wrap around in the back, there's an angle bar that we can loop it over that would keep it on there and not fall off going down the road. But they just had a ton of different apparatus. Like we were talking about, these guys that would come up from Texas that have all these different type 3 engines that we're used to dealing with. And on our strike team, we were the only one with a different type of apparatus. So it was interesting looking at their setup compared to ours and trying to pick some ideas from them and things that we could do to ours. But definitely, yeah.
I appreciate that. I was, curious about that because services do the same thing.
Yeah.
We're talking about and learn from each other in that respect. The other thing I wanted to ask you really quickly is, first of all, thank you for doing this. It's nice to have you all reaching out to try to provide a ton of information for us, those that are interested in learning about these things. As a citizen of Aurora, what can we do to help support you? Because you all the ones that are keeping us safe. Whether it's voting, whether it's, whatever. Is there anything that we can do as citizens, besides, trying to be active on these kinds of things, to help you all in your mission? Because as I was telling Jeremy earlier, some people don't think about things until they need to think about things. And they're dialing that 911 or they're, what can we do to make your jobs easier?
I think there are some opportunities, this engagement you're talking about, and being engaged with their fire departments. So having conversation with them, getting on our website. We have a lot of useful tools on our website, especially through CRR, that would help people be prepared for these emergencies. And a lot of times preparation, especially when we talk about evacuation, or knowing that everybody's out of a house, so us pulling up on a structure fire and knowing out front everybody safely got out and they're able to verbalize or communicate with us, we're all out, we've accounted for people, we're still going to aggressively make sure the occupancy is clear, but it's very helpful for us that when a family has practiced that and then has the ability to have a meeting spot and communicate that with us. So preparing for other natural disasters, again, knowing they need to get out, they need to be self-sufficient, that is very helpful to the fire department. So I think a big part is some education is provided by us in this opportunity, but that opportunity to go onto our websites and self-educate themselves to make them better prepared for emergencies really helps us a lot.
Fantastic.
Yeah, if I may add and dovetail off to what Chief Hackbarth is saying, as far as especially evacuations in a wildfire type of situation, I think it's imperative for our residents to understand that if they feel unsafe, then leave early. Evacuate early. And if you're going to do that and you make that decision, then make sure that you're navigating intelligently out of your neighborhood. So you have more than one way to leave, because that might not be the best, safest choice through smoke or even fire for that matter. So, and then also kind of having a destination to go to. So that would be that. And also driving responsibly. So obeying the traffic, the speed, traffic controls, windows up, lights on, those types of things. So, as far as evacuation is concerned, I think that would be my big message there for our community.
Nice. Well, thank you. Thank you again for having us tonight. It's been a pleasure, and that's all I had.
Sure.
Did you have an add-on? I just want to make
Well, no, I can't, to emphasize what Chief said, I think, and safety is really about working together and working in concert. And, Aurora Fire is here obviously to respond to the needs of the community, but part of keeping everyone safe is obviously, accessing the information, taking the precautions that we know that us as citizens and, we can take to help mitigate that risk. At the end of the day, we want to be able to have residents that are prepared, that are knowledgeable, that are aware, and what we're trying to do is provide that level of information and access to the information so that everyone can learn about how to be safe, learn about the proper measures to take to make sure that their home is safe and to make sure that they're prepared if something was to happen. And part of that is obviously us providing the information and the public, taking that and taking that with them and learning from that. And like we said, accessing and opting into things such as these codes where, you can receive that information and know it's time to go, or it's, something's coming, we got to get ready. So, continue to work together in that way.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, if I could add one last thing, it kind of with what Eduardo was saying, was that this is a partnership. It's imperative to everyone understand that the fire department has their responsibility for being prepared and to execute when needed. But then you have our community, being prepared as well, and then our land managers and property managers. That's taking care of their lands and creating that defensible space. And so I think truly understanding that this is all a partnership here. So,
yeah. Awesome. Thanks for that. Well, with that, I think we're going to conclude the evening, and really appreciate the questions in person and online, and also recognize that there might be people who watch this later because they couldn't watch it live. So feel free to still send us your questions, afdpio@auroragov.org, or send us a direct message on any of the social media accounts that we have on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we'll take a look at those and answer your questions the best of our ability. So thank you for your time this evening, and hope you have a great night. Thanks to you all for participating as well.
Thank you.